Buckle up, Buttercup. We're talking about the man, the myth, the absolute unit of Tudor chaos, Henry VIII. Forget the dusty portraits and the great reformer nonsense. This is the story of a guy who fundamentally reshaped Western civilization because he was basically the 16th century version of a guy who buys a Twitter clone just to delete his ex's account. Alright, look at this man. Look at him. He's a square. He is literally as wide as he is tall. He looks like a velvet-clad fridge that's about to file a complaint with the manager of Earth. But before he was the 6 wives and a side of bacon guy, Henry VIII was the golden boy. He was 6 feet 2 inches, ripped, spoke 4 languages, played the lute like a rock star, and had a temper that could boil tea. We're talking about a man who didn't just break the rules. He saw the rules, decided they were cringe, and then invented a new religion just so he could stop seeing his wife's face at breakfast. He's the original main character. And unfortunately for 16th century England, everyone else was just an NPC in his very expensive, very bloody RPG. Today we're looking at how a handsome jock became a literal monster, all because he couldn't get a delete button for his marriage. To understand Henry, you have to understand that he was never supposed to be the lead singer. He was the bassist, the backup dancer, the spare. His older brother, Arthur, was the one. Arthur was the plan. Arthur was the Prince of Wales who was going to lead England into a bright, boring future. Henry? Little Henry was tucked away in a palace with his sisters, learning how to dance and write poetry, basically living the Disney Channel original movie version of royalty. Cool. Arthur gets the crown and the hot Spanish princess. I get more theology homework and a really nice pair of tights. This is fine. I'm definitely not going to develop a massive inferiority complex that destroys the geopolitical landscape of Europe. Then, 1502 happens. Arthur marries Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. Yes, the Columbus ones. They go off to a drafty castle in Wales for their honeymoon. 5 months later, Arthur dies. Yeah, he probably caught a sweating sickness, which is exactly what it sounds like and was a solid 0 out of 10 on the ways to die scale. Suddenly, Henry VII, the king, a man so cheap he probably recycled his own bathwater, is panicking. He's got one son left. One. And he's just lost the Spanish alliance and the wedding dowry. Listen, Catherine. I know your husband just died and you're grieving, but can you stay in this damp room for the next 7 years while I decide if I want to marry you to my other son or maybe just keep your money? Also, you're paying for your own candles. Peace. Henry VII spent the next several years being an absolute nightmare. He basically kept Catherine of Aragon as a political prisoner / houseguest. She was living in poverty, selling her jewelry to pay her servants, while young Henry was growing up into a literal Greek god. By the time Henry VII finally kicked the bucket in 1509, young 17-year-old Henry looked at the throne and said, "Finally, my turn." And what's the first thing he does? He marries his brother's widow, Catherine. Now, back then, marrying your brother's wife was a big no-no in the Bible. It was like Leviticus-level bad. But Henry was like, "It's fine, the Pope gave me a hall pass. Plus, look at me, I'm beautiful. God loves me." He was crowned, he was married, and he was the most popular man in Europe. He spent money like he found a cheat code for infinite gold. He threw parties that lasted for weeks. He wrestled the King of France just for the vibes. Everything was perfect, except for one tiny, microscopic problem that would eventually lead to a lot of people losing their heads. He needed a son, and as the years went by, and the nurseries stayed empty of boys, Henry started looking at Catherine, and then looking at his Bible, and then looking at the cute girl in the front row of the choir, and he started thinking, maybe God is mad at me, or maybe I just need a new vibe. Henry's dad was so obsessed with money that when he died, he was the richest man in Christendom, but his son was so obsessed with aesthetic that he spent the equivalent of $5 million on a single banquet in his first year. The transition from stingy dad to sugar daddy king was so fast it gave the English economy whiplash. Alright, grab another espresso because the honeymoon phase is over and the 16th century version of The Bachelor is about to turn into a psychological thriller. We're moving from young, hot, and rich to anxious, annoyed, and litigious. So, it's been about a decade. Henry and Catherine of Aragon are the IT couple. They're basically the Posh and Becks of the Renaissance. But there's a massive elephant-sized problem in the room. The nursery is suspiciously quiet. Catherine has been pregnant multiple times. It's tragic, honestly, but in 1516, they finally get a survivor, Mary. She's great, she's smart, she's a girl. And in Henry's head, a daughter is basically a participation trophy. He needs a son to keep the Tudor name on the letterhead, or else England goes back to the Wars of the Roses. which was basically a 30-year-long group chat argument that ended in actual murder. Okay, Mary is cool. But where is the lad? Where is the Henry IX who's going to carry my heavy-ass sword? Is it me? No, it can't be me. I'm a masterpiece. It must be the vibes, or the wife. Mostly, the wife. While Henry is having an existential crisis about his DNA, he decides to distract himself by being the arbiter of Europe. Enter the Field of the Cloth of Gold in 1520. Imagine a music festival, but instead of Coachella, it's just two kings, Henry and Francis I of France, trying to outflex each other. They built temporary palaces out of canvas and glass, fountains that literally flowed with red wine for free, and Henry brought 2,800 horses. He spent a year's worth of national income on a 3-week party just to show off his calves. But the wine wears off, the hangover hits, and Catherine is getting older. The son situation hasn't changed. Henry starts looking at Catherine and seeing a reminder of his brother Arthur. He starts reading his Bible, specifically Leviticus 20:21, which says if a man takes his brother's wife, they shall be childless. Wait, childless means no sons, right? The Pope lied to me. My marriage isn't a marriage, it's a divine clerical error. I'm not a bad guy, I'm a victim of bad paperwork. Enter the woman who would inadvertently break the Western world, Anne Boleyn. Now, Anne wasn't just some girl. She'd been at the French court, which in the 1520s was the equivalent of being an influencer in Paris today. She had it. She was witty, she spoke fluent French, she played the lute, and most importantly, she knew how to say no. Henry had already hooked up with her sister, Mary Boleyn. He figured Anne would be the same. A quick fling, a piece of jewelry, and back to the throne. But Anne played 4D chess while Henry was playing Hungry Hippos. Oh, you want to hold my hand? That's cute. Talk to me when there's a crown on my head and a signed, sealed, delivered divorce in your hand. Until then, I'm busy reading books you probably can't pronounce. Henry was obsessed. He started writing her love letters that are genuinely embarrassing to read today. He's the King of England, and he's writing, I wish I were in your arms, for I think it hath been long since I kissed you. He's down bad, folks. He's sending 40 texts in a row levels of desperate. But there's a hitch, a giant Roman Catholic hitch. To marry Anne, he needs to dump Catherine, and to dump Catherine, he needs the Pope to say the first marriage was a whoopsie. Usually the Pope would have done this. Popes loved giving kings favors. But Catherine of Aragon's nephew was Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, and his army had just, and I cannot stress this enough, literally kidnapped the Pope. Listen, Henry, I'd love to help you get with the French girl, but the Emperor is currently using my gardens as a parking lot for his cannons. If I divorce his aunt, he's going to turn me into a decorative rug, take a cold shower, and call me in 5 years. Henry doesn't do waiting. He turns to his right-hand man, Cardinal Wolsey, and basically says, fix this, or your head is going to look very lonely on a pike. Wolsey starts the great matter. Years of legal debating, theological hair-splitting, and the 16th century equivalent of filing 10,000 pages of discovery. Catherine, meanwhile, refuses to back down. She goes to court, kneels at Henry's feet in front of everyone, and gives a speech so heartbreaking it makes the audience cry. I've been a Crown Standard wife for 20 years. I was a virgin when we married. I've done nothing wrong. Ugh, you're making this so awkward, Catherine. Can't you just go be a nun and let me marry the girl with the cool French hat? The stage is set. The Pope is stalled. Catherine is stubborn. Anne is waiting in the wings, getting impatient. And Henry is about to realize that if the Pope won't give him a divorce, he might just have to fire the Pope. The legal drama is peaking. The Pope is ghosting Henry's DMs, and Anne Boleyn is tapping her foot so hard she's putting a hole in the palace floorboards. We are entering the scorched earth era of the Tudor dynasty. Imagine the messiest celebrity divorce you've ever seen on TMZ. Now, multiply it by the fate of eternal souls and add a dash of international war. That is the great matter. Henry's logic is a masterclass in gaslighting. He's telling everyone who will listen, and many who won't, that his 20-year marriage to Catherine was actually a giant accident. He's obsessed with a specific line in the Bible about not marrying your brother's widow. See? The Bible says if I marry my brother's wife, I'll be childless, and I don't have a son. Therefore, the marriage never happened. It was just a 20-year-long fever dream with a lot of Spanish accents. But sire, you have a daughter. Mary is right there. She's literally waving at you. I don't see anything. I only see a lack of Y chromosomes and a very frustrating Pope. Cardinal Wolsey is trying his best. He sets up a special court at Blackfriars in 1529. He brings in another cardinal from Rome, a guy named Campeggio, who has gout so bad he has to be carried everywhere in a chair. The goal? To get the marriage annulled. But Catherine of Aragon isn't playing. She walks into the court, ignores the judges, and kneels directly at Henry's feet. It's the ultimate power move. She gives a speech about how she's been a true, humble, and obedient wife, and then she just leaves. She walks out of the court and refuses to come back. She basically pulled a "I'd like to see the manager." But the manager was God, and she knew she had the receipts. While this legal battle is happening, Henry and Anne Boleyn are basically living together. They're going on hunting trips. Anne is wearing the Queen's jewelry, and the public hates it. People are literally shouting Christian-hating harlot at Anne in the streets. Does she care? No. She's busy picking out new curtains for the Tower of London. Cardinal Wolsey failed. He couldn't get the divorce. So Henry did what any reasonable 16th century monarch would do. He stripped Wolsey of his power, took his giant house, Hampton Court, and Wolsey died before he could be executed. But then Henry finds his new favorite person, Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell isn't a noble. He's a lawyer and a fixer. He's the guy you call when you want to make something illegal suddenly very legal. Your Majesty, why are we asking the Pope for permission to do anything? Who is he? Just a guy in a fancy hat in Italy. You're the King of England. Why not just be the Pope of England too? Go on, I'm listening. Does this mean I can have the divorce? It means you can have whatever you want, and you can also take all the church's gold. It's a win-win, mostly for you. This is the Reformation. It wasn't just a religious shift, it was the ultimate "I'm quitting this club and starting my own" move. In 1534, the Act of Supremacy is passed. Henry VIII is now the supreme head of the Church of England. If you agree with this, you get to keep your head. If you disagree, like Henry's old buddy, Sir Thomas More, your head ends up on a stick on London Bridge. Henry is no longer just a king, he's a god king with a legal department. Henry didn't even like Protestantism. He hated Martin Luther. He wrote a book roasting Luther so hard the Pope gave him the title Defender of the Faith. Henry just wanted the power to fire his wife. He kept almost all the Catholic rituals, the incense, and the fancy robes. He just swapped the Pope's picture for a mirror. Finally, in 1533, the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, another Cromwell ally, declares Henry's marriage to Catherine null and void. Henry is already secretly married to Anne Boleyn. She's pregnant. This is it. The son is coming. The kingdom is saved. The baby is born in September 1533. It's a healthy, screaming, vibrant girl. You have got to be kidding me. Wait. Her name is Elizabeth. She's going to be iconic. She'll have a whole era named after her. Don't look at the axe, Henry. Look at her red hair. Things are about to go from complicated divorce to actual slasher movie. We've reached the 1530s, and Henry has realized that breaking up with the Pope was the easy part. The hard part? Dealing with the fact that he's still not getting a son and his new wife has a very sharp tongue. So, Anne Boleyn is queen. She's won, right? Wrong. In the Tudor world, winning is a temporary state of being. It's 1536. Anne has had one daughter, Elizabeth, and a couple of tragic miscarriages. Henry is starting to get that itchy feeling again. You know the one, where you feel like God is punishing you because your wife is too smart and hasn't produced a male heir. Plus, Anne isn't like Catherine. She doesn't do meek. She argues with Henry. She has opinions on politics. I didn't move heaven and earth and invent a new religion for opinions, Anne. I did it for a boy. Where is he? Enter Thomas Cromwell again. He realizes that if he wants to stay in Henry's good graces, he needs to provide the king with an exit strategy. And in the 1530s, an exit strategy didn't mean a settlement. It meant a scandal. Cromwell rounds up a bunch of Anne's friends, including her own brother, and accuses them of, well, everything. Adultery, incest, plotting to kill the king, probably double parking their horses. It was all complete nonsense, but in a world where the king is the judge, the jury, and the guy who pays the executioner, nonsense is a conviction. Anne is sent to the Tower. She goes from the throne to a cell in a matter of days. And here's the most Henry part of the whole thing. While Anne is literally waiting for the axe, Henry is already courting her successor, Jane Seymour. He's basically browsing Tinder while his current wife is being read her charges. Henry wanted to be classy about the execution, so he sent for a specialist swordsman from Saint-Omer in France because using a regular axe was too common for Anne. Anne, ever the wit, famously remarked that the executioner wouldn't have much trouble because she had a little neck. On May 19, 1536, Anne's head hits the straw. 11 days later, Henry marries Jane Seymour. Talk about a quick turnaround. Now we enter the montage phase of Henry's life. He's middle-aged, he's gained weight, and he's increasingly paranoid. Wife number 3, Jane Seymour. The vibe, the quiet one. Jane was the opposite of Anne. She was submissive, she was plain, and most importantly, she finally gave Henry what he wanted. A son. Jane died 12 days after the birth from childbed fever. Henry was actually heartbroken. He wore black for months. For the rest of his life, he considered her his true wife, mostly because she died before she had a chance to annoy him. Henry stays single for 2 years, but Cromwell is worried. England is lonely. It needs allies. He points at a portrait of a German princess, Anne of Cleves, painted by Hans Holbein. "Look, sire, she's a 10. She's perfect for a Protestant alliance. She looks all right. Send for her." This leads to the most awkward, blind date in history. Henry decides to prank her by dressing up as a commoner and bursting into her room to kiss her. This was a weird Renaissance tradition called love at first sight. Anne, who has no idea who this loud, sweaty, disguised man is absolutely disgusted and pushes him away. "She's ugly. I don't like her. She smells like old beer. Cromwell, you're fired." He marries her anyway to avoid a war, never consummates it, and divorces her 6 months later. To her credit, Anne of Cleves was the smartest of the bunch. She said, "Sure, let's be brother and sister instead." Took a massive settlement of palaces and cash and lived a long, happy life as the king's beloved sister, while everyone else was dying. Wife number 5, Catherine Howard. The vibe, the reckless teenager. Henry is now 49, has a gross leg ulcer, and weighs as much as a small piano. Catherine is 17 and likes to party. Henry called her his rose without a thorn. Spoiler, the rose had thorns. She had a boyfriend on the side, Thomas Culpeper. When Henry found out, he didn't just cry, he went full final boss mode. Catherine Howard followed her cousin Anne Boleyn to the block in 1542. At this point, the court of England is basically a survival reality show. Who's left to marry the man who has a kill count higher than his heir count? We've reached the end game. The jock is gone, replaced by a man who is more mythical beast than monarch. It's time for the series finale of the Tudor era. By the 1540s, Henry VIII isn't just a king, he's an atmospheric event. He has become the wide lad of history. He's over 400 pounds, his waist is 54 inches, and he has a chronic ulcer on his leg that smells so bad you can literally scent the king coming from 3 rooms away. He's paranoid, he's grieving, and he's still looking for a wife. But at this point, the Queen of England job description should really just say, must be comfortable with sudden damp dungeons and slash or sharp metal objects. Enter wife number 6, Catherine Parr. The vibe, the nurse/scholar. Catherine Parr was a twice-widowed, super-intelligent woman who actually wanted to marry someone else, Thomas Seymour. But when the King of England asks you to marry him, you don't say, "I'm busy." You say, "I'd love to," and start praying. Catherine was the glue. She managed to bring Henry's 3 children, Mary, Elizabeth, and little Edward, together for the first time. She was basically the stepmom trying to fix a deeply traumatized family. She almost got executed too, because she liked to argue about theology, but she managed to talk her way out of it by telling Henry, "Oh, I only argued with you so you could teach me because you're so much smarter than me. I knew it. I'm a genius. Guards, cancel the arrest warrant. We're getting Wendy's." Note, they didn't have Wendy's, they had roasted swan, but you get the energy. In January 1547, the clock finally ran out. Henry was 55, which in Tudor years is basically 110. His last words were reportedly, "Monks, monks, monks," or maybe just a request for more wine. History is a bit blurry on the specifics. Remember that exploding coffin teaser? It's real. During his funeral procession, the king's body was so, let's say, gas-heavy from the decomposition process that while the coffin stayed overnight at Sion Abbey, the lead lining reportedly popped. When the plumbers arrived to fix it the next morning, they found a dog licked up the, well, let's just say Henry didn't have a dignified exit. So, what was the point of it all? He broke the church, executed 2 wives, beheaded his best friends, and spent the entire national treasury. For what? He wanted a male heir to secure the Tudor line. He got Edward VI, a sickly boy who died at 15. Then he got Mary I, who spent her reign trying to undo everything he did. And finally, he got Elizabeth I, the daughter he didn't want, by the woman he executed, who became arguably the greatest monarch in English history. History has a sense of humor, doesn't it? Henry VIII tried to rewrite the world to suit his whims, but in the end, the girls he ignored were the ones who finished the story.